That night, I stood on the porch, 27 years old, and too old to be taught a lesson with violence. She grabbed my wrist and slapped me, right in front of neighbors watering their lawns. The living room blinds twitched shut, my father's hand pulling them down, sealing the silence over the neighborhood. 3 days later, that entire HOA was in an emergency meeting over a video I never knew existed, and I wasn't the one who started the projector. My name is Eliza Carr. I am 27 years old, and I spend my days cataloging the resilience of coral reefs at the Blue Current Institute here in Harborview, Maine. My world is one of data, tidal charts, and the quiet, persistent logic of the ocean. It is a world that makes sense. Which is perhaps why the text message felt like such a violation of physics. It landed on my phone screen at 4:07 in the afternoon. Just as I was cross-referencing thermal bleaching data, it was from my stepmother, Claudia Mercer. "Don't come to Brielle's engagement party. You ruin the atmosphere." Not "please don't come." Not "it might be awkward." A simple, flat statement of fact. I was a pollutant. I ruined the atmosphere. I was holding a flexible plastic binder, the cover sheet detailing a multi-year projection for a new restoration project. My hands, usually steady enough to calibrate the most delicate sensors, began to tremble. It was a slight tremor, starting in the thumb, radiating outward. The binder didn't fall, but the rustle of the pages was loud in the quiet lab. It was the feeling, the one I'd spent the last decade trying to outgrow, the one I'd moved to the opposite side of the state to escape. It was the sudden, cold sensation of being invisible, of being fundamentally wrong in a way I could never fix. I stared at the group chat above her message, the family thread. I scrolled up, looking for context, for the barrage of happy planning messages I must have missed. And then I looked at the thread title. It had been renamed, Carr Mercer Family. My name was gone. My phone buzzed again, this time on the desk. A different thread. My father, Ray Carr. I had forwarded him Claudia's message without comment. It was our routine. She attacked. I presented the evidence. He mediated. The little gray text appeared under my forward. Scene. I waited. 1 minute, 5, 10. The scene remained. Stark and blue. No typing. No call incoming. Just the silent confirmation that the message had been received and filed away. It was his lifelong habit, his specialization, strategic silence. He was a man who believed peace was the absence of noise, not the presence of justice. The lab door hissed open. Noah Keegan, my boyfriend and the best marine engineer on the coast, walked in, holding 2 cups of bad cafeteria coffee. "You're staring at that spreadsheet like it personally insulted you," he said, setting a cup on my desk. He glanced at my phone screen, still lit up with my father's digital silence. Noah, bless his logical heart, doesn't understand subtext. He builds ROVs. He deals in pressures and tolerances. "Family stuff," I said, my voice tight. He frowned, picking up his own phone. "Weird. I was just looking for that address for Brielle's party. Did they delete the family group chat?" I swallowed the acidic taste in my throat. "No, they just removed me from it." Noah stopped. He processed this. "They... what? Like, someone had to manually go in, tap your name, and hit remove participant?" "That seems to be the methodology, yes." "But why?" "I ruined the atmosphere," I said, the words tasting like ash. Noah looked at me, then at the coral data, then back at me. He didn't offer platitudes. He just said, "That is an objectively cruel and inefficient way to communicate." He looked at the box under my desk, the one I'd been meaning to deal with for 6 months. "What's that?" "The last box," I said. "My mom's stuff, old field journals, photos from the tide pools, a few of her teaching awards. I hadn't known what to do with it. It felt wrong to keep it hidden, but wrong to display it. Now, seeing Claudia's text and my father's silent assent, I knew exactly what to do. "I'm going to go return it," I said. "Eliza, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." I shut the binder. The tremor in my hands had stopped. replaced by a cold, dense clarity. It's not theirs to keep, and it's not mine to hide. It's the perfect excuse. I'm not coming to argue about a party I'm uninvited from. I'm just dropping off property. I was done being invisible. If they were going to remove me, they were going to have to do it to my face. The drive to Seabrook Landing was a transition from reality to performance. I left the smell of salt, diesel, and low tide in Harborview and drove inland, toward the manicured, silent estates where the HOA bylaws were thicker than my doctoral thesis. Their house, my father's house, was at the end of a perfect cul-de-sac. It was just after 5:30, the suburban golden hour. The automatic sprinklers hissed on cue. Across the street, Mrs. Davies was watering her prize-winning hydrangeas. Further down, two kids were kicking a soccer ball on the pavement, their voices bright in the quiet air. I parked at the curb, not in the driveway. I took the box, a simple cardboard banker's box, and walked up the bluestone path. I was halfway to the door when the porch light clicked on, illuminating me in a harsh, artificial glare. The front door opened. It wasn't my father, it was Claudia. She stood there, framed in the doorway, dressed in expensive-looking beige linen. "I told you not to come, Eliza," she said. Her voice wasn't raised. It was calm, as if addressing a trespasser. "I'm not here for the party. Claudia, I'm here to drop this off." I held the box up slightly. "It's my mother's. I figured you'd want the space." Claudia's eyes narrowed. She stepped out onto the porch, letting the heavy door sigh shut behind her. The sound of the kids playing soccer stopped. Mrs. Davies paused. Her hose pointed at the ground, a small puddle forming at her feet. We were a stage. "You always have to make a scene," Claudia hissed, walking toward me. "You can't just accept that you don't belong here. You're not in our world. You're not in Brielle's world. This isn't about worlds. This is a box of memories. Can you please just take it so I can go?" "You're jealous," she spat. The word was sharp. "Jealous of Brielle. Jealous of what this family has. You and your little fish-saving job. Thinking you're better than us. You're low class, Eliza. And you always will be." "I'm leaving," I said. I turned to put the box down on the porch steps, to just get it out of my hands. "You don't turn your back on me." She moved fast. Her hand shot out and clamped around my wrist. The one not holding the box, her nails dug in. "Let go of me, Claudia." "You will listen when I speak to you." She shoved me. I stumbled back, my other hand flying out to brace against a pillar. I am 27. I am strong. I spend weekends hauling gear onto research vessels. I didn't fall, but I was defending myself. "You have no right to touch me," I said, my voice rising, cutting through the humidity. She hated that. She hated the loss of control. She grabbed for the box. "Give me that." "No!" I twisted away, holding my mother's things close. And then she slapped me. It wasn't a shove. It was a full, open-palmed, back-swinging slap across the face. The sound was shocking, a sharp, wet crack that absorbed all the other noises in the street. The sprinklers, the distant traffic, the children, everything went silent. My cheekbone exploded with heat. My ear rang. I stared at her, stunned. Behind her, in the wide picture window of the living room, I saw movement, a sliver of white, a vertical blind, twitching. And then it closed. One slat at a time, the blind snapped shut, pulled by a cord from the darkness inside. My father, Ray Carr, he wasn't just watching, he was actively closing the curtain. He was sealing me out, he was erasing the scene. That was what broke the shock. Not the slap, the curtain. Claudia was breathing hard, her face flushed with rage. Across the street, Mrs. Davies was a statue. I saw the kids down the block, frozen, and then I saw it, the gleam of a smartphone, angled up from behind Mrs. Davies's prize-winning bush. I took a slow breath. The ringing in my ear subsided. I looked directly at Claudia, but I spoke to the neighborhood. My voice was clear, loud, and it did not shake. I came to return my mother's memories, I said, projecting past her, past the closed blinds, to every listening ear. I did not come here to be humiliated or assaulted. I turned, deliberately. I did not run. I walked down the bluestone path. One step at a time, I got to the sidewalk, my cheek throbbing, the imprint of her fingers already rising on my skin. As I turned toward my car, I glanced across the street, not at Mrs. Davies, but at the house next to hers, the one with the doorbell camera. A small, insidious red light was blinking. It was active. It was recording. I got in my car. I put the box on the passenger seat. I did not drive away. I just sat there as the adrenaline began to recede, leaving the cold, shaking truth. A moment later, my door opened. It was Noah. He must have followed me, must have parked down the street. He didn't say anything. He just got into the passenger seat, moving the box of memories to his lap. He looked at the red mark blooming on my face. He didn't ask what happened. He just reached over and took my trembling hands in his. "I'm not letting them bury this," I whispered. It wasn't a promise to him. It was a promise to myself. My work was about bringing things to the light. This would be no different. My phone, sitting in the center console, lit up. A new text. From Brielle. "I don't know what you just did, but Claudia is furious. Can you please not ruin my event? This is important." I picked up the phone. My fingers were steady now. I typed my reply. "I am an adult, Brielle, and I was just struck in front of your house. To understand what happened on that porch, you have to understand Seabrook Landing. It isn't just a neighborhood. It's a curated ecosystem. It's a gated community where the gates aren't just physical, they are financial, social, and aesthetic. The Homeowners Association, the HOA, doesn't just govern the height of your hedges or the approved 38 shades of beige you can paint your mailbox. It governs the flow of information. It manages the narrative. In this ecosystem, my stepmother, Claudia Mercer, is the face of community benevolence. She chairs the annual Seabrook Charity Gala, raising staggering sums for causes that look good on a newsletter. She is the HOA's social chair, the unofficial welcomer, the person who ensures the community maintains its placid, expensive surface. And my father, Ray Carr, is the man who makes the surface possible. He is the volunteer financial advisor for the community's sizable investment fund. Claudia manages the social currency. He manages the literal kind. They are a closed loop, a self-sustaining system of power. They decide who is visible and who is not. Into this system enters the next generation. My half-sister, Brielle, and her new fiancé, Gavin Lyle. Brielle is the system's perfect product. She's a rising star in digital marketing, a woman who has successfully branded her entire life. Gavin is her match, a handsome, sharp-edged man who manages an investment fund. They are a merger, not just a marriage. Their engagement party wasn't just a celebration. It was a networking event, a consolidation of the Seabrook brand. My place in this ecosystem has always been problematic. My exclusion wasn't because I was a failure. I was an A student. I was quiet. I was polite. The problem was that I was, and am, fundamentally off-brand. My mother, the woman my father loved before Claudia, was a high school science teacher. She was brilliant and messy and smelled like chalk dust and salt air. She died when I was 12, leaving behind a legacy that didn't involve fundraisers or strategic alliances. She left me the box, the one Claudia had tried to wrestle from my arms. It sits on my coffee table now, the cardboard edges soft with age. I opened it last night, after Noah drove me home, after the ice pack on my cheek had melted. Inside, there are no stock certificates. There are her field journals, filled with precise, elegant handwriting detailing the feeding habits of sea stars. There are photographs, faded and curling, of me as a child, grinning on a tidal flat, holding a horseshoe crab. There are her notes for experiments, sketches of diatom structures, and a pressed piece of sea lavender. This is my inheritance. I chose to follow it. I chose the ocean. I chose a career in marine conservation, a life spent in wading boots and laboratories, fighting for things that cannot speak for themselves. My work is vital, it is meaningful, and it is my entire identity. But it is not lucrative. It does not produce the kind of income that impresses Gavin Lyle. And it doesn't provide the kind of photo opportunities that Brielle can leverage on social media. My father used to be proud of this. I have a vivid memory, clear as glass, of being 14. I had just won a state-level science fair for a project on estuary acidification. He drove me home, and he was quiet for a long time. Then he pulled the car over, looked at me, and said, "You have your mother's mind. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small for it." He was the one who pulled the blinds. Claudia's influence was a slow-acting toxin. It happened over years. His pride became quiet, then private, then silent. He stopped asking about my research. He started talking about keeping the peace. Peace, in my father's house, meant Claudia's comfort. It meant my silence. It meant Brielle's spotlight. It meant I should be grateful for whatever scraps of inclusion they offered me, and I should never, ever make a sound that might disrupt the harmony. A slap on a porch was a loud, disruptive sound. The scene on his messages was the sound of him choosing peace. The neighbors in Seabrook Landing operate on the same principle. They are masters of the art of looking away. They value a beautiful, undisturbed streetscape above all else. They will tolerate alcoholism, infidelity, and financial ruin, as long as it happens behind closed doors and the lawn remains immaculate. A woman being struck by her stepmother in the open air, under the 5:30 sun, is a profound violation of their social contract. It's not the violence that offends them, it's the visibility of it. It's messy. It creates a problem. It forces them to acknowledge the rot under the perfect sod, and it demands they choose a side. They would much rather, as my father did, simply close the blinds. "You need to write it all down," Noah said. He was sitting on my sofa, the morning after, holding a fresh ice pack. He hadn't left. Every single detail, the time, the words, who was there, everything. He's an engineer. He believes in data, evidence, documentation. I hesitated, the ice pack cold against my still hot skin. What's the point? Noah? It's their word, their entire community's word, against mine. They'll just say I was hysterical, that I was the aggressor. So we get data they can't argue with. "I just want to let it go," I whispered, but the words felt false. Running meant letting Claudia win. It meant confirming that I was, as she'd said, someone who didn't belong. It meant agreeing to be invisible. But fighting felt like stepping into an arena where she owned the lions, the crowd, and the emperor. "Eliza," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "You're a scientist. You don't ignore an anomaly. You investigate it. This is just data." I nodded, my throat tight. I pulled out my laptop and began to type, creating a timeline, stripping the emotion out, leaving only the facts, the text message, the time of arrival, the conversation, the slap, the closing of the blinds. As I was finishing, my email pinged. It was a mass message, sent to the entire Seabrook Landing HOA mailing list. The subject? A note on community harmony. My blood went cold. It was from the HOA board, but the language was pure Claudia. "Dear neighbors, it has come to our attention that a private family misunderstanding was unfortunately made public last evening. We cherish the peace and privacy of our community. We strongly urge all residents to refrain from engaging in or spreading unsubstantiated rumors or gossip, which only serve to harm our closely knit neighborhood. We trust you will all join us in respecting the boundaries of our residents as this matter is resolved internally. Best, the Seabrook Landing HOA Board." A private family misunderstanding. Unsubstantiated rumors. Resolved internally. They were building the seawall. They were shutting it down, painting me as a rumor, a piece of gossip, a family problem. I was being erased, collectively, by 38 approved shades of beige. I felt that familiar, cold sensation, The feeling of being small, of being wrong, of being invisible. My work at Blue Current, the respect I'd earned, the competence I felt every day. It all dissolved when faced with my family. At work, I was Dr. Carr, an expert in my field. In Seabrook Landing, I was just Eliza, the difficult off-brand daughter who ruined the atmosphere. I closed the laptop. Noah was right. But what data did I have? My word, the mark on my face, it wasn't enough to fight an ecosystem. Then my phone buzzed. A text message, but not from anyone I knew. It was an anonymous number, a burner prefix. The message was short. It was just a screenshot of a neighborhood map, the kind the HOA provides, with security camera locations marked. One location, at the end of my father's cul-de-sac, was circled in red. Below it, one line of text. Camera 17, it has the file from last night. I stared at the message. The system wasn't as sealed as I thought. Someone else had seen. Someone else was unwilling to just close the blinds. A small, internal promise I had made to myself on that curb last night, the one I whispered to Noah, suddenly crystallized. I will not let them bury this. This time, I would not disappear. This time, I would not be resolved internally. Noah looked at the screen, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Well, look at that," he said. "Truth is like a current, Eliza. You block it in one place, it just finds another way to get through." The anonymous text message, the map with camera 17 circled in red, changed the chemical composition of my fear. It turned despair into strategy. I was no longer just a victim of a family drama. I was an investigator with a lead. My first move was official, clean, and by the book. I opened the Seabrook Landing HOA covenants and bylaws, a PDF document so dense it could sedate a whale. I found the section, Article 12, Section 4, Community Security and Transparency. It guaranteed any resident access to community-held footage pertaining to a direct security incident involving their person or property. I drafted an email. It was cold, formal, and devoid of emotion. 2. The Seabrook Landing HOA Board. Subject: Formal request for security footage. Incident date. Dear board members, pursuant to the rights guaranteed in Article 12, Section 4 of the HOA bylaws, I am formally requesting the complete, unedited video file from the community security camera designated as number 17, cul-de-sac, Seabrook Way and Harborview Drive. The footage is required as evidence of a security incident, specifically an assault, perpetrated against me on date at approximately 5:30 p.m. at Father's address. Please provide this file within 48 hours, per the bylaws transparency clause. My contact information is below. Sincerely, Dr. Eliza Carr. I sent it, and I waited. The response didn't take 48 hours. It took less than 3. It came not from the general board email, but from the president herself, Marjorie Flynn. Dear Eliza, thank you for reaching out. The board values the safety of all our residents. However, we must also balance this with the profound privacy rights of everyone in our community. Reviewing and releasing footage is a complex process. Claudia Mercer, who sits on the Security and Aesthetics Committee, is handling this inquiry personally to ensure all perspectives are considered before the board takes any action. We ask for your patience as we navigate this delicate internal matter. Warmly, Marjorie. Delicate, internal, privacy, and Claudia herself was the gatekeeper. It was a perfectly constructed, polite, bureaucratic brick wall. My father's closed blinds, written in corporate email language. They were locking it down. I felt the old familiar sinking feeling. I was checking tide charts at the Blue Current lab, trying to focus on thermal stress patterns, but my mind was stuck in that cul-de-sac. Then my phone buzzed on the desk, a direct message on Instagram, from a name I vaguely recognized from neighborhood newsletters, Theo Park. Hey Eliza, I think that's your name. I live over on Mariner's Cove. I'm a freelance photographer. I heard what happened. That email the HOA sent was absolute garbage. My fingers hovered over the screen. Theo Park is typing. Look, this is weird, but I fly my hobby drone a lot. I was getting some sunset shots of the neighborhood yesterday evening, just for my portfolio. I think I caught what happened on your dad's porch. The angle is high up, but it's clear. My heart hammered against my ribs. Me, is there sound? Theo. No. The mic on my drone is terrible, mostly just wind. But the video is stable. It's pretty clear. You can see her swing. You can see you go back. And you can see the blinds close in the window. I'm really sorry, but I have it. I took a deep breath. Me. Can you send it to me? Theo. That's the thing. I'm terrified of the HOA. They have insane rules about drone operation. If they find out I filmed this, even accidentally, they could fine me thousands or try to get me banned. Claudia Mercer already hates me because my truck isn't a community standard color. Me. I will never, ever reveal who sent this. Your name will never be associated with it. I swear it. Theo. A minute passed. A link appeared in my inbox. I clicked it. It was exactly as he said. A high, distant angle, looking down. The quality was 4K. There I was, walking up the path. There was Claudia, stepping out, the argument, the shove, and then, unmistakably, the wind-up and the slap, my head snapping to the side, and just as clearly, the vertical blinds in the living room window twitching, then snapping shut, one by one, like a zipper. It was my word against theirs. Now, I had data. I immediately called Noah. He was quiet for a long moment after I told him. Okay, he said finally, his engineer brain kicking in. This is good, but this is messy. They'll attack the source. They'll say it's illegal surveillance. So what do? We get someone who knows the rules better than they do. I have a friend from college, Avery Cole. She's a civil litigator. She doesn't get emotional, and she hates bullies, especially corporate bullies. And an HOA is just a petty corporation. Let me send her the file. Let me send her your timeline. I agreed. We had a video call with Avery Cole 2 hours later. She was sharp, dressed in a severe black blazer, and had obviously already reviewed everything. She didn't waste time on apologies. Ms. Carr, Eliza, she began, her voice crisp. I've reviewed your timeline, the drone footage, and the HOA's email response. Let's be perfectly clear so you don't waver on this. You are a 27-year-old adult. You were on property you were invited to, or at least had a right to be on. You were assaulted by another adult. This is not a family misunderstanding. It is, by legal definition, assault and battery. The fact that she is your stepmother is irrelevant to the law. But the HOA... The HOA is now actively obstructing a legitimate investigation. Avery cut in. Marjorie Flynn's email is a classic stall tactic, and naming Claudia as the investigator is a blatant conflict of interest. They are exposed. We are going to leverage that. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a focus. What do? We continue to build our case, quietly. The drone footage is our leverage. But we don't use it yet. We use the threat of evidence. We let them think they're in control. The next piece of evidence came, as it so often did, from the opposition, an email, forwarded to me from another anonymous account. This one clearly from inside the HOA structure. It was part of an internal board-only thread. The author, Claudia Mercer. The recipients, Marjorie Flynn, Ray Carr, HOA Board. Subject, formal request for security footage. Marjorie, this is unacceptable. This is a private family matter and Ray and I are handling it. That girl was trespassing and hysterical. Releasing any footage would be a gross violation of our privacy and a massive liability. We need to shut this down immediately for the reputation of the community. I trust this will be buried. Ray agrees. Buried. Ray agrees. He hadn't just closed the blinds. He was helping her shovel the dirt. Avery was grim when I forwarded it to her. She's put it in writing. She's admitting to coercing the board. This is a gift. Keep it. That evening, I got another text. It was from Marjorie Flynn, from her personal number. Can you meet me? 20 minutes. The coffee shop in the village. Please come alone. I found her in a back booth, stirring her tea so aggressively the spoon clinked against the ceramic. Marjorie was a woman who always looked perfectly put together, but now her hair was slightly frayed, and she looked pale. "Eliza," she said, not meeting my eye. "Thank you for coming. I'm in a terrible position." "You mean because Claudia is illegally blocking my request?" Marjorie flinched. "Claudia runs this community, socially, financially. You don't understand. But I didn't ask you here for that." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. "There are other people on the board, people who are sick of how she operates. Someone doesn't want this truth to get out, but someone else does." "What are you telling me, Marjorie?" "I'm telling you that my hands are officially tied." She stressed the word. "But if a resident were to formally petition for an emergency community meeting, citing Article 15, safety and transparency, the board would be required to hold it, and we would be required to present all relevant evidence to the residents, all of it, including Camera 17. She was giving me the key. She was terrified of Claudia, but she was more terrified of the legal liability Avery Cole represented. I went back to the lab, my mind racing. I pulled my keycard logs and asked my supervisor at Blue Current for a formal letter. He provided it without question, a verified, time-stamped document stating Dr. Eliza Carr had exited the Institute at 4:40 p.m. The drive was 50 minutes, without traffic. I had an alibi placing me there at the exact time of the assault. I was organizing the files, the drone video, the internal email, Marjorie's hint, the Blue Current letter, when a text came through from Brielle. "Eliza, please, I'm begging you. I'm hearing things from Mom. Whatever you're doing, please stop. You're going to ruin my engagement party. Don't make this public. Please." I looked at the message, the plea for silence, the complete lack of concern for my well-being. All she saw was a threat to her perfect aesthetic. I typed back a single, cold question. "Are you silent because you're embarrassed, Brielle, or because you're afraid of the truth?" She didn't answer. That evening, Noah and I sat down and rebuilt the timeline. We stripped out all my emotional language. It became a pure, factual log. 17:31:02. E. Car arrives. Holding box. 17:32:15. C. Mercer engages. E. Car on porch. 17:33:40. C. Mercer initiates physical contact. Shove. 17:33:51. C. Mercer strikes E. Car, open palm, right hand. 17:33:53. Living room blinds close. Witness R. Car. We added the new data points, Theo's drone footage, the internal emails, the Blue Current alibi. We were building a case, not an argument. The final piece, however, I could never have predicted. I was driving home when Mr. Whitcomb, an elderly man from 2 streets over, a retired district court judge, flagged me down. He was walking his dog. "Dr. Carr," he said, his voice surprisingly firm. "I was on my constitutional. I saw the entire exchange on your father's porch. The entire exchange." He looked at me over his glasses. It was appalling. I saw Ray Carr in the window. That HOA email was a disgrace. I am a witness, young lady. If you need someone to speak who isn't afraid of Claudia Mercer or her gala, you have my card. He handed me a crisp, heavy stock card, the Honorable James Whitcomb, Ret. I got home, my hands shaking with a new kind of energy. Avery Cole was already drafting the next letter. This one wasn't a request. It was a formal notice, a demand to preserve all evidence, citing the existence of the drone footage, the doorbell camera, and the testimony of Judge Whitcomb. She sent it certified mail to every member of the HOA board and to Ray and Claudia Carr at their home address. The trap was set. When I walked up to my apartment door, something was on the mat. It was small, black, and unmarked, a simple, anonymous USB drive. I picked it up, went inside, and locked the door. My heart pounded as I plugged it into my laptop. One file, It wasn't the drone footage. It was from the ground. It was the doorbell camera from across the street. The red light I had seen. The file was complete, and this time, it had audio. The USB drive felt heavy, dense with potential energy. I plugged it in, my laptop screen flickering as it mounted the drive. One file. Doorbell Cam 17 Main, MP4. I clicked play. It was the view from across the street, the one I had glimpsed as I walked away. The red light? The timestamp in the corner matched my timeline to the second, and it had audio. It wasn't just wind noise, it was clear digitized sound. Not in our world. You're not in Brielle's world. Claudia's voice, sharp and superior. This isn't about worlds. This is a box of memories. Can you please just take it so I can go? My own voice, tight but steady. You're jealous, low class, Eliza, and you always will be. I'm leaving. You don't turn your back on me. The sound of the scuffle, my own sharp. Let go of me, Claudia. And then the slap. The sound was sickening, a sharp thwack that made me jolt in my own apartment. It was followed by a split second of absolute silence. And then my voice, louder than I remembered, cutting through the stunned air. I came to return my mother's memories. I did not come here to be humiliated or assaulted. The video continued as I walked away. My back rigid. It captured the door to my father's house remaining firmly shut. It captured Mrs. Davies across the street, frozen, her hose spilling water onto the pavement. It captured the moment the living room blinds snapped shut, one after another, a final, definitive closing. I had it. I had the seen and the heard, the complete data set. While I was processing this, Claudia launched her counteroffensive. It wasn't legal. It was social. She understood the Seabrook Landing ecosystem. The truth didn't matter as much as the narrative. She posted on the private neighborhood social media platform. It was a picture of her, Ray, and Brielle, all smiling at some past charity event. The caption was a masterpiece of passive aggression. Feeling so blessed for my family, we, like all families, sometimes have painful misunderstandings, but we handle them with privacy, grace, and love. We are so saddened that one person's emotional outburst has been twisted into something ugly by outside gossip. We ask our dear friends and neighbors to please respect our privacy and not pass judgment. We are focusing on what matters. Brielle's beautiful engagement. Love conquers all. A painful misunderstanding, an emotional outburst, my emotional outburst. She was recasting me as the unstable, hysterical element. She was painting herself as the loving, forgiving matriarch. The comments were a flood of sycophantic support. Thinking of you. Claudia, you are all class. Don't let them get you down. We know your heart. Community stands with you. It was a performance, and the audience was eating it up. 2 days later, the official HOA monthly newsletter landed in every resident's inbox. The front page featured a glowing profile. Claudia Mercer, the heart of Seabrook Charity. It celebrated her decade of selfless contributions, and at the bottom, a small, unsigned note. A reminder. The HOA does not tolerate the spread of malicious or false rumors. Let's keep Seabrook Landing the positive, supportive community we all love. The message was clear. Claudia is the heart of the community. Eliza is a malicious rumor. Choose your side. The narrative was being set in stone. I sent the doorbell video file to Avery. Her call came almost immediately. This is it, Eliza. This is the unassailable truth. It's perfect. I want to post it, I said, my voice shaking with anger. I want to put it right under her post about love conquering all. I want them to see it. No, Avery said, her voice sharp and cold, pulling me back from the brink. Absolutely not. We do not release our evidence. We do not play her game. We play ours. Her game is social media shame. Our game is rules, bylaws, and liability. Right now, she thinks she's winning. She's arrogant. She's posting. She's manipulating the newsletter. She believes she has successfully buried this. So what do we do with the video? We do nothing, Avery said. We let the knowledge of the video do the work. I sent the preservation of evidence notice. They know we have a witness, Judge. They know we have the drone footage. Now, I'm going to send one very quiet email to Marjorie Flynn and the board's counsel, simply attaching a 1-second screenshot from this new file, the one with the timestamp. I'm not going to threaten, I'm just going to ask. Are you certain you have no further responsive materials to my Article 12 request? The effect was instantaneous. Marjorie Flynn, who had been avoiding my emails since our coffee shop meeting, suddenly proposed a solution to the entire board, forwarding the email to me as a show of good faith. In light of the persistent concerns regarding the incident on date, and to uphold our commitment to community safety, I am formally calling an emergency community meeting. The topic will be security and transparency in Seabrook Landing. All residents are invited. We will review all relevant bylaws and procedures. Thursday, 7 p.m. She was terrified. Avery's screenshot proved they were actively hiding evidence. Marjorie wasn't protecting Claudia anymore. She was protecting herself and the board from a massive lawsuit. The meeting was her only way out. She was going to force the truth into the light to save her own skin. The battle lines were drawn, and that's when my family tried to break them. First, Brielle. She didn't text. She called, her voice high and frantic. Eliza, you have to stop this. You've made your point. You're scaring everyone. This meeting? What are you trying to do? Implode the family a week before my party? I'm trying to ensure a grown woman isn't assaulted on her father's porch. Brielle. It was a fight. You know how Mom gets. Please, just meet me. Coffee. Tomorrow morning. Just us. Please, let me fix this. I agreed. I needed to see her face. We met at a neutral cafe, far from Seabrook Landing. She looked exhausted, her perfectly branded life showing cracks around the edges. She twisted a napkin in her lap. Eliza, I am so sorry, she whispered, leaning in. Okay? I'm sorry she hit you. It was awful. But this public meeting, it's going to destroy everything. What is everything, Brielle? Your party? Your engagement? Her eyes filled with tears, and for a second, I saw my sister. Not the brand. Yes, no, it's the image. It's the whole thing. She waved her hands vaguely. It's the life Claudia built, the perfect family, the perfect reputation. I know it's fake. God, do I know it's fake? But it's safe. It's what Gavin wants. It's what I've worked for. If this comes out, Gavin, his partners, they don't like messes. So you're asking me to swallow an assault to protect your fiancé's partners from a mess? I'm asking you to let us handle it privately. I'll make her apologize. I'll make Dad. Dad did nothing, I said, my voice flat. He pulled the blinds. She flinched. I know. I'm ashamed of him. I'm ashamed of all of it. But I'm scared. Eliza, I'm scared of what happens when the perfect mask drops. I don't know who I am without it. I looked at her, this woman who had everything I was told I should want, and I just felt tired. I'm not stopping the meeting, I said. It's out of my hands. It's an HOA matter now. But I'll give you a choice. You were a witness. You've seen the video, haven't you? She looked down, nodding. Claudia had shown her. You can either be silent and be complicit with her, or you can come to the meeting and you can tell the truth. Just that. You saw it. It was wrong. And it happened. If you do that, I will never, ever drag you into my personal fight with her or Dad again. This will be the end of it. For you. She stared at her shredded napkin. I can't do that to Mom. She's not my mom. Brielle. And she did this to herself. You have until Thursday. I left her at the table. The next attempt came that night. A text message. From my father. It was the first direct communication from him since the scene notification. Eliza, I am so very sorry I closed the blinds. My hands were shaking as I held the phone. It was the apology I had waited for my entire life, the admission, the crack in his wall of silence, but it felt thin. It felt late. I typed back, my thumb hovering over the send button. Are you sorry because you were ashamed of what you did? Or because you're afraid of the neighbors seeing the video? I hit send. The typing bubble appeared. It stayed for a full minute, and then it vanished. No reply came. He had my answer. The final, most desperate move came from Gavin, Brielle's fiancé, but he didn't contact me. He contacted Noah. Noah was at his apartment when he got the text. He showed it to me later, his face set in stone. Gavin Lyle. Hey Noah. Gavin here. Brielle's fiancé. Heard you're close with Eliza. Look, this whole family thing is a mess. It's bad for business. Brielle is stressed. And frankly, it's making my investors nervous. I know Eliza listens to you. Get her to call off this HOA meeting. Make it go away. We can be very accommodating. I know Blue Current is always looking for donations. We could easily make a $20,000 contribution to her favorite project. In your name. Think about it. Noah's reply was short. I don't think about it. Don't contact me again. He saved the screenshot. Avery was ecstatic. It's attempted bribery. It's evidence of a conspiracy to silence a victim. This is no longer a family spat. This is a legal case. Claudia, realizing her social campaign and her family's private efforts had failed, made one last move. She went for moral authority. I was at home, prepping my notes for the meeting. When my doorbell rang, I opened it to find Pastor Davies from the Seabrook Community Church, the husband of the woman with the hydrangeas. Eliza, he said, his smile full of practiced pity. Claudia and Ray are so worried about you. They asked me to come and speak with you, to offer counsel. This must be a time of great anger and confusion. Forgiveness is a powerful healer, my child. I stared at him. Pastor, are you here to counsel me about being assaulted? Or are you here to pressure me into silence on behalf of the people who assaulted and abandoned me? He faltered, his smile slipping. Claudia is a pillar of our church. She is distraught. She feels you are in pain and acting out. She just wants her family restored. Can't we just pray on this and find a path to reconciliation? Reconciliation requires truth. Pastor, are you here to hear the truth? Before he could answer, my phone rang. It was Avery. Eliza, put me on speaker, right now. I did. Pastor Davies, Avery's voice was like ice. My name is Avery Cole. I am Eliza Carr's legal counsel. You are now officially interfering in a pending legal matter. You are engaging in witness tampering on behalf of Claudia Mercer. If you do not leave my client's property immediately, I will file for an emergency restraining order and name you and your church in a civil suit for conspiracy. Do you understand me? The pastor's face went white. He turned and walked, almost ran, down the steps without another word. Avery sighed. They're desperate. Eliza, they're throwing everything at the wall. Now, let's talk about the rumors. What rumors? The ones tamer than the pastor, the ones at your job. They're leaking that you're unstable. Suing your own family. They're trying to discredit you professionally. A cold dread filled me. My job. The one place I was safe. What do I do? Nothing. I already called your director. I went into the Blue Current Institute the next day, my stomach in knots. My director, Dr. Aris, a man who commanded global respect, called me into his office. Eliza, he said, closing the door. I received a call about a personal matter. Dr. Aris, I am so sorry. He held up a hand. You are one of our best researchers. Your work on coral resilience is groundbreaking. I don't care about your family drama, your stepmother, or your neighborhood association. I care about my people. The Institute stands behind you 100%. You take whatever time you need. You protect yourself. We've got your back. Is that clear? I almost broke down. It was the first time an institution had ever chosen me. It was the opposite of my father's closed blinds. Yes, I said, my voice thick. Thank you. Good. Now, Go win. Avery Cole was no longer just my counsel. She was my strategist. We had a conference call the Tuesday before the meeting, and she laid out the battlefield. They think this is one fight. Eliza, she said, her voice crisp and devoid of sympathy. It was exactly what I needed. They are mistaken. This is a 3-layer plan. What you are doing on Thursday is just layer 1. She explained. Layer 1 is the HOA. We are not there to ask for an apology. We are there to enforce the bylaws. The fight is not Eliza versus Claudia. The fight is a resident versus a negligent and corrupt board. We are going to use their own rules to force public transparency. We will make them the defendants. Layer 2, she continued, is civil. That is the assault and battery suit. The preservation of evidence notices have been served. We have the witness testimony from a retired judge. We have the attempted bribery from Mr. Lyle. We have the witness tampering from the pastor. This has escalated far beyond a slap. We are building a case for punitive damages, and they know it. Layer 3, she finished, is your protection. The moment this meeting is over, regardless of the outcome, we file for a temporary protective order. Claudia is not allowed near you, your home, or your place of work. We are done playing defense. We are now dictating the terms. My role in this plan was simple: data integrity. While Avery prepared the legal framework, Noah and I prepared the data. We were back in our element. This was not a family feud. It was a research project. First, I went to an urgent care clinic. I needed the injuries documented before they faded. A doctor photographed the deep, crescent-shaped fingernail marks on my wrist and the cluster of broken capillaries blooming on my cheekbone. The official report read, soft tissue bruising consistent with blunt force trauma and contusions consistent with forceful grabbing. A preliminary medical report. Check. Second, the witness, the Honorable James Whitcomb. He had already provided a signed, notarized affidavit detailing exactly what he saw and heard. Check. Third, the videos. We had 2. Theo's high-angle, 4K drone footage, which established the timeline and the clear physical actions, and the anonymous doorbell camera, which provided the damning, crystal-clear audio. Noah took all of it and did what he does best. He synthesized it. He created a master timeline, but overlaid it on a satellite map of the cul-de-sac. This is what we give them, he said, pointing to his laptop screen. It's a multi-source data validation. He had mapped the sight lines, a green line from Judge Whitcomb's position on the sidewalk, a blue line from the doorbell camera, a red line from Mrs. Davies's hydrangeas, a high-angle circle for the drone. Look, he said, pulling up another window. I cross-referenced the U.S. Naval Observatory data for sunset times for that date in Harborview, the shadows on the porch, their length and direction, perfectly match the 5:32 p.m. timestamp on the doorbell cam. Every piece of data confirms every other piece. It is an immutable, verified event. This was our weapon, not the anger, not the history. It was just the cold, hard, verifiable truth. Avery used this packet to formally petition for the emergency meeting, as Marjorie Flynn had suggested. The petition, co-signed by Judge Whitcomb and 2 of his allies in the neighborhood, cited Article 15, Safety and Transparency. It specifically demanded an open meeting, accessible to all residents, to review a significant public safety failure. Marjorie, trapped between our lawsuit and Claudia's power, had no choice. She scheduled the meeting. The email blast went out. Emergency community meeting. An open discussion on security and transparency. Thursday, 7 p.m. Community Hall. Claudia, as expected, went nuclear. We heard from our anonymous internal source that she stormed into the pre-meeting board review, demanding they vote to block the presentation of any video evidence, citing her own resident privacy. This is a private family matter, she had reportedly screamed. It sets a terrible precedent. You are letting that girl bully this board. It was Judge Whitcomb who checkmated her. He didn't raise his voice. He simply sent a single, devastating email to the entire board, which our source forwarded to us minutes later. To the board, I urge you to review Bylaw 12, Section 4, Subsection C, which you all ratified. Evidence pertaining to acts of physical violence or significant threat to residents in a public access community area must be prioritized for review to ensure community safety. Note the word must. This is not discretionary. To block this video would be a willful and actionable violation of your own governance. I trust I will not have to explain this simple concept to an actual court. The motion to block the video was silently dropped. The community hall was equipped with a standard, aging ceiling projector. "I don't trust it," Noah said. "It's the single point of failure. What if it suddenly breaks? What if the bulb burns out?" He was interrupted by a direct message to me. It was Theo Park, the drone photographer. "Hey, just so you know, I'm on the HOA's Volunteer Tech Committee. I signed up to run the AV for the meeting on Thursday. I'll be the one at the laptop. Don't worry about a thing. The projector will not fail, and the audio will be very clear." Noah smiled. "Good. I'm still bringing a backup." While Noah and Theo handled the hardware, I worked on my own part. I sat at my laptop, trying to write the speech. My first drafts were full of fire, of history, of the closed blinds and the years of being invisible. I sent them to Avery. Her reply was blunt. "No. This is emotion. We use facts." I rewrote it. I stripped out every word of accusation, every reference to my childhood, every mention of my father. I timed it on my phone. 90 seconds. It was not a plea. It was not an attack. It was a statement of fact. I detailed my arrival, my stated purpose, returning my mother's property, the verbal escalation initiated by Claudia, the assault, and the subsequent official attempts by the HOA to classify the incident as a rumor. My speech ended with a single, cold question. My only goal tonight is to ask, what are the rules of safety for an adult resident in this community? And who, exactly, is allowed to break them? Avery approved it. "Perfect. You are not the prosecutor. The evidence is the prosecutor. You are Dr. Eliza Carr, calm, professional, factual." Noah, true to his word, packed a heavy-duty bag. Inside was a portable, high-lumen projector and a battery-powered 30-inch monitor. "Plan B," he muttered. "Always have redundant systems." Avery, meanwhile, was handling the fallout. "I've already spoken to a reporter at the Harborview Post," she informed me. "She specializes in municipal politics and corrupt HOAs. She smells blood. I told her I would give her an exclusive, on-the-record interview after the meeting is over." "Why after?" "Because we don't try this in the media," Avery said. "We are the reasonable ones. We are the ones following the process. We let Claudia be the one who screams about cameras and privacy. We let the HOA be the one that looks corrupt. Then, after they have trapped themselves, we release the objective facts to the world." The day of the meeting, the neighborhood was silent, humming with tension. Brielle had disappeared. She hadn't responded to my text. She hadn't answered my calls. She was trapped between her conscience and her terror, and she had chosen paralysis. I had no idea if she would even be there. Then, at 5 o'clock, 2 hours before the meeting, my phone vibrated. A text from my father. "I will be at the meeting tonight." My heart did a strange, painful flip. It was the first time he had ever acknowledged a confrontation before it happened. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't just seen. He was showing up. The old stupid hope flickered. The 14-year-old at the science fair, hoping for her dad. My fingers were steady as I typed the reply. "Are you coming to look? Or are you coming to see?" The typing bubble appeared. It stayed for a long, agonizing minute. Then it vanished. No answer. We arrived at 7 o'clock. The Seabrook Landing Community Hall was a sterile, expensive room of pale grays and brushed nickel. Tonight, it felt like a courtroom. It was packed. Every seat was taken. Residents were standing 3 deep along the back wall. I saw Mrs. Davies, the hydrangea waterer, wringing her hands. I saw the pastor, who refused to meet my eye. I saw Theo at the tech table, calmly checking cables. In the front row, the Honorable James Whitcomb sat, his back ramrod straight, staring forward. And in the third row, they sat, Claudia and my father. Claudia looked magnificent, dressed in a sharp cream-colored blazer. She was whispering to her allies, projecting serene confidence, as if she were at a charity brunch. My father, beside her, looked gray and diminished. He stared at the blank projector screen at the front of the room, his face a mask. He didn't look at me. Avery and I took our seats in the front row, directly opposite Judge Whitcomb. Noah gave me a quick nod from the tech table and then focused on his laptop. I took a slow breath. I reached down to the canvas tote bag at my feet. I pulled out the cardboard banker's box, my mother's box, the one that had started all of this, filled with her journals and her photographs from the tide pools. I didn't open it. I just placed it on the empty chair next to me. She had been erased from this community once. She deserved a seat tonight. At the front table, Marjorie Flynn, looking pale and ill, picked up the gavel. She banged it on the table. The room went silent. Marjorie Flynn gripped the lectern, her knuckles white. She banged the gavel, and the sound was flat and small in the dense, silent room. "This emergency meeting is called to order," she said, her voice strained. She read from a prepared script, her eyes fixed on the paper. "We are here to discuss Agenda Item 1, Transparency and Community Security, specifically in relation to the incident reported on." She checked the date. The evening of October 5th. Before she could continue, Claudia Mercer stood up from the third row. She did not wait to be recognized. She smiled, a broad, confident, patronizing smile, as if she were about to announce the winner of a raffle. "Marjorie, thank you," she said, her voice booming with false warmth. "And thank you all, neighbors, for coming. I know we're all so busy, and frankly, I feel this is all a terrible overreaction." She turned, her gaze sweeping the room, landing on me for a split second. What we had was a verbal clash, a private, emotional disagreement within a family. My stepdaughter, Eliza, she's very sensitive. She has always been. She came to the house upset, and I was trying to calm her. She gave a short, dismissive laugh. "I certainly didn't assault her. The very idea is slanderous. I'm appalled that this has been escalated to this level, wasting everyone's time and sullying the community's good name over a simple misunderstanding. She was brilliant. She was setting the narrative before a single piece of evidence had been shown. She was painting me as the hysterical, sensitive child." She made to sit down, looking satisfied. "Madam President." The voice cut through the room like a scalpel. It was Judge Whitcomb, from the front row. He was standing, but he didn't need to. His authority filled the space. "Madam President, Mrs. Mercer has offered her testimony," he said, his tone dry. "I believe it is now time for the community to review the primary evidence, per the petition, and in accordance with Bylaw 12, Section 4, I formally request the board now present all relevant security footage related to the incident." Marjorie looked trapped. She glanced at Claudia, who was no longer smiling. Claudia's eyes flashed with pure venom. "The board is required to comply, Madam President," Avery Cole added from beside me, her voice clear and carrying. Marjorie swallowed, her throat clicking. "Very well." She nodded to the back of the room. "Mr. Park, please proceed with the first file, camera 17. Theo, at the tech table, gave a single, professional nod. The lights in the hall dimmed. The large projector screen at the front of the room, which had been blank, flickered to life. It was the doorbell cam, the angle from across the street. The timestamp was clear in the corner. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the projector fan. And then, the sound, the digitized, clear audio. "Not in our world. You're not in Brielle's world." A few people in the audience shifted. This was not a verbal clash. This was an execution. "Low class, Eliza, and you always will be." I heard a sharp intake of breath from Mrs. Davies. The hydrangea waterer. You don't turn your back on me. The video showed Claudia grabbing my wrist, the shove, my voice. Let go of me, Claudia. And then, the sound, the sickening thwack of the slap. It was so much louder in the large hall, it echoed. A woman in the back row gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The room was dead silent as the video continued. They watched my head snap back. They heard my voice, clear and shaking with adrenaline but not hysteria. I came to return my mother's memories. I did not come here to be humiliated or assaulted. The video played on. It showed me walking, back straight, down the path, and then the climax. The camera's view was fixed on the house, the living room blinds. One by one, click, 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 they snapped shut. The video ended. Theo brought the lights up, but only halfway, leaving the room in a state of suspended twilight. No one moved, no one spoke. The entire community of Seabrook Landing sat in stunned, collective silence. They had not just seen a slap. They had seen the cover-up, enacted in real time by the man who sat in the third row. I saw Mrs. Davies, the witness who had done nothing. She had her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Claudia was the first to speak. Her voice was a shriek, high and ragged. No, this is a lie. That is a deceptive angle. It's edited. You can't trust this. It's been manipulated. The footage is raw. The voice came from Theo, at the tech table. He stood up, calm and professional. That is the original, unedited MP4 file from the camera. Ma'am, the metadata is intact. The timestamp is verified. It has not been altered. You're lying, Claudia shrieked. You're in on it with her. This is a conspiracy. Theo, sit down, Noah said, standing up next to him. Neighbors, my name is Noah Keegan. I'm a marine engineer. My work involves calibrating high-sensitivity data systems. I personally cross-referenced the shadow lengths on that porch with the U.S. Naval Observatory sunset data for that evening. The time is accurate to the second. What you saw is what happened. Claudia looked wildly around, searching for an ally. She found none. I turned my head, just slightly. I looked at my father. He was not looking at me. He was not looking at Claudia. He was staring at his own hands, clasped in his lap. His head was bowed, his entire body slumped, as if the strings holding him upright had been cut. He was a man hollowed out. I didn't feel hatred. I didn't feel anger. I just felt the vast, cold emptiness of an affirmation. He had seen, and he had chosen. Then, a new sound, a scraping of a chair. From the back of the room, near the door, Brielle was standing up. She was shaking, her face paper white. She looked like she was going to be sick. She walked, unsteadily, to the auxiliary microphone set up for resident comments. She gripped the mic stand. "Mom," she whispered, and the speakers amplified her tremor. "Mom, stop. Please, just stop." Claudia froze, her mouth open. "What? What was in that video?" Brielle said, tears streaming down her face. That was the truth. I knew. She told me what happened. I knew, and I was silent. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate, terrible shame. I was silent because I was afraid. I was afraid of this exact moment, but it was the truth. She let go of the mic and ran from the room, the side door slamming shut behind her. The dam of silence broke. The room erupted. "Why did the HOA call this a rumor?" a man from the back shouted. "You lied to us, Marjorie. Why was this camera footage delayed? What kind of pressure were you under?" All eyes turned to Marjorie Flynn. She was sweating, dabbing at her upper lip with a tissue. There was internal pressure," she stammered. "There was a conflict of interest. Mrs. Mercer sits on the security committee. We were trying to resolve it." "You were trying to bury it," Judge Whitcomb boomed. Avery Cole stood up. She held a copy of the HOA bylaws in her hand. "Neighbors," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. Let's be clear about what we just saw. This was not a family misunderstanding. This was not an internal matter. This was an adult resident, Dr. Eliza Carr, being assaulted in a public access community area by another resident, who then used her position of power on this board to block the evidence. She looked directly at Claudia. The law is very clear on this. Your feelings about your stepdaughter are irrelevant. Your desire for privacy ended when you laid hands on another adult. This is not a family issue. This is a public safety issue. It was discipline, Claudia screamed, finally finding her voice again. She was on her feet, her cream-colored blazer rumpled, her face blotched with rage. It was in-house discipline. She is my daughter, and she was hysterical. I have the right. She is 27 years old. Judge Whitcomb slammed his walking stick on the floor, the thud silencing her. She is a legal adult. You have no more right to discipline her than you have to discipline me. This is not your house. It is the community. Sit down. Claudia stared at him, stunned, and then defeated. She crumpled back into her chair. I move, Judge Whitcomb said, addressing Marjorie. I move for an immediate vote, a vote to suspend Claudia Mercer from the Security and Aesthetics Committee, and from all other board functions, pending a full, independent internal investigation into this cover-up. Second, a dozen voices yelled. Marjorie, desperate, called the vote. All in favor? A forest of hands went up. Mine stayed down. Avery's stayed down. It wasn't our vote to cast. It was the community's. I looked around. Mrs. Davies, the man from the back, nearly everyone. All opposed? Claudia raised her hand, a single, defiant gesture. A few of her allies, scattered in the crowd, slowly, hesitantly, raised theirs. The motion passes, Marjorie said, her voice barely a whisper. Claudia Mercer is suspended, effective immediately. A quiet, stunned applause rippled through the room. Claudia sat frozen, staring at the blank screen. Then, a new voice, broken. I would like to speak. It was my father. He was on his feet, but he looked smaller than I had ever seen him. He walked to the microphone Brielle had abandoned. He put his hands on it, but they were shaking so badly he had to grip it to stay steady. He looked at the crowd. He looked at Marjorie. And then, finally, he looked at me. His eyes were red. I was the one, he said, his voice cracking. I was in the living room. I saw it. I saw what she did. And I pulled the blinds. He paused, taking a ragged breath. She said it was a family matter, but that's not why I did it. He looked at me, and I saw the 14-year-old at the science fair, disappearing. I did it because I was afraid, he whispered. I was afraid of the scandal. I was afraid of the noise. I was afraid of what Mrs. Davies would think. I was afraid of this. He gestured to the room. I was a coward. I saw my daughter assaulted, and I hid. I was wrong. He let go of the microphone and walked, not back to his seat next to Claudia, but to an empty chair in the very last row, where he sat down, put his head in his hands, and wept. The room was silent again, but this was a different silence. It was heavy with a terrible, public confession. Marjorie looked at me, her eyes pleading. It was my turn. I walked to the lectern. I pushed my 90-second, pre-written speech aside. I didn't need it. I looked at the crowd, at my neighbors. My father is right, I said, my voice clear and steady. He was a coward. My stepmother, I said, looking at Claudia, who was staring at me with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred, was a bully, and this board, I said, looking at Marjorie, was complicit. But I did not call this meeting to demand humiliation. I did not come here to make my father cry or to have my stepmother suspended. I pointed to the empty chair next to me, where my mother's box sat. I came here because of a box of memories. I came here to set a boundary. I am a 27-year-old adult. This is a community of adults. This meeting was never about revenge. It was about my right, and every resident's right, to be safe in our own neighborhood, to not be silenced, to not be erased by a newsletter or a closed blind. I looked at the faces in the crowd. They were not looking at me with pity anymore. They were looking at me with respect. I am not demanding a personal victory tonight. I am demanding that this board create a safe, transparent, and non-negotiable boundary for every adult in this community. That is all. I picked up my mother's box from the chair, held it to my chest, and walked back to my seat. The meeting ended not with a bang, but with the scraping of chairs. People filed out in silence, avoiding eye contact with Claudia, who remained frozen in her seat. My father had already slipped out the back door. Noah and Avery flanked me as we walked to the car. My mother's box held tightly against my chest. No one said a word. The truth, once revealed, had a weight that seemed to suck all the air out of the night. The official fallout began the next morning. At 9 a.m., an email from the HOA board, minus Claudia's name, was sent to every resident. Subject: Notice of board suspension and new community initiatives. Dear residents, following the emergency meeting on October 9th, the board has voted to temporarily suspend Claudia Mercer from all committee and board functions, effective immediately, pending a full, independent investigation. Furthermore, we are establishing an anonymous, third-party channel for residents to report any and all concerns regarding board conduct or community safety. We are committed to rebuilding trust and ensuring absolute transparency. Further details on the new election for HOA president will be forthcoming. It was a complete capitulation. The ecosystem was recalibrating. Claudia's response was not silent. It was legal. By noon, a process server was at my apartment, handing me a thick envelope, a cease and desist letter, and a threat of a defamation suit for slander, libel, and the malicious organization of a public conspiracy to harm her reputation. I scanned the furious, rambling document and forwarded it to Avery. Avery's reply came an hour later, CCing Claudia's lawyer. Attached. Please find our countersuit, which was prepared days ago in anticipation of this exact frivolous and retaliatory action. This suit includes, but is not limited to, assault, battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, conspiracy to obstruct justice, witness tampering, via Pastor Davies, and attempted bribery, via Mr. Gavin Lyle. We also have the full, unedited video and audio, and the notarized testimony of a retired judge. We welcome discovery. Please advise how your client wishes to proceed. The silence from their side was immediate and absolute. While Claudia fought with lawyers, Brielle was fighting with her conscience. She had gone to the house after fleeing the meeting. I found this out from a text she sent me later. A long, rambling voice note filled with tears. She had confronted Claudia, demanding she apologize, demanding she see what she had done. Claudia's reported response was ice cold. Apologize? I gave you this life. I gave you your entire reputation. That girl tried to burn it all down, and you stood there and handed her the gasoline. You don't get an apology. You owe me a thank you for every single thing you have. That was the first crack. The second came from Gavin. He didn't call Brielle to see if she was okay. He called to strategize. This is a media nightmare, Brielle, he told her. My partners are seeing chatter. This HOA meeting, it's messy. We need to get ahead of it. I think we should postpone the engagement party, just until we can stabilize the narrative and get your mother out of the news cycle. Brielle told me, in the voice note, that it was the first time she realized he wasn't her partner. He was her publicist. She wasn't a person to him. She was a project. The perfect brand she had been so afraid of losing was just a product he was afraid he could no longer sell. She realized the mask she was terrified of dropping was one he never wanted to see behind. She hung up on him, then she packed a bag and left, turning off her phone. She was staying. She told me, at a friend's apartment in the city. She just needed air. She needed to be somewhere where no one was performing. The day after the meeting, I received a package, a small padded envelope left with my apartment concierge. Inside, there was no note, just a single, old-fashioned key and a small printed map of my father's house, with a circle around his downstairs office, specifically, around a wall safe hidden behind a bookcase. I drove there that afternoon. I wasn't sure if anyone would be home. I didn't care. I let myself in the front door. My old key still worked. The house was silent, sterile. Claudia's car was gone. I went to my father's office. The key slid into the lock, and the safe opened with a quiet thud. It wasn't full of bonds or cash. It was full of me and my mother. There were old photo albums, the ones Claudia had archived to the attic, my first-grade report card, the medal from the science fair, and underneath it all, a stack of letters, tied with a ribbon. They were in my mother's elegant, scientific script. One, on top, was different. It was sealed. My name was on the front, in my father's handwriting. From your mother. She wrote this for you. I was supposed to give it to you when you graduated college. I'm sorry. I kept it, thinking it would be safer here. I sank onto my father's leather chair, the one he had hidden behind for years. I opened the letter. My dearest Eliza, if you are reading this, you are an adult, and I am not there to see you. There is so much I want to say. I want to tell you about the migrating patterns of shorebirds. I want to tell you that your mind is a beautiful, rare thing. But I will tell you this, the most important thing I know. The world, especially the one your father lives in, will try to make you small. It will reward polish over substance. It will value gala invitations over title charts. People will tell you that you are too sensitive, too serious, or too quiet. Do not listen. If you choose the ocean over a ballroom, I am proud of you. If you choose truth over harmony, I am proud of you. Do not ever let anyone, not even your father, teach you to be ashamed of being kind or of being right. Your boundaries are the most sacred thing you own. Defend them. You are the daughter of the tide. You are meant to be relentless. I love you, Mom. I sat in that silent office and I wept. It was the first time I had cried since the incident on the porch. But this was not the cry of a victim. It wasn't weakness or hysteria or anger. It was a profound, grounding sob of release. It was the feeling of a hand reaching through time, grabbing my shoulder, and holding me steady. I wasn't an anomaly. I wasn't off-brand. I was exactly who I was supposed to be. I was relentless. I left the house, taking the letter with me. The next day, my director at Blue Current called me in. Eliza, Dr. Aris said, I heard what happened at the meeting, and I've heard about the anonymous tip line they opened. It seems you're not just a scientist. You're a systems analyst. I smiled. Something like that. Good. We are launching a new community outreach program on sustainable coastlines and shoreline boundaries. It needs a leader who can handle complex data and difficult public forums. I'd like you to co-lead it. It was a promotion. It was a validation. It was, we've got your back, made manifest. The Harborview Post story ran that Friday. The reporter Avery had contacted wrote a masterpiece of objective journalism, detailing the HOA's bylaws, the suspension of Claudia, the resignation of Marjorie Flynn, who had officially stepped down, and the establishment of the new Transparency Initiative. It quoted Judge Whitcomb on the legal definition of assault. A local news station picked it up. They called me for an interview. We're doing a segment on nightmare neighbors, the producer said, her voice bright. No, I said, my voice polite but firm. I'm not interested in a segment on nightmare neighbors, but I will come on and talk about the legal and social boundaries of adult safety in planned communities. I will talk about how to use bylaws to enforce transparency. I will not be part of a sensationalist story. My focus is on the process. The producer, stunned, agreed. The community, for its part, was changing. The power vacuum left by Claudia and Marjorie was real. People were openly talking about who to nominate for the new president, and the consensus was someone who isn't afraid of the truth. When I walked my neighborhood, neighbors didn't look away. They didn't offer me those pitying, tight-lipped smiles. They nodded. Mrs. Davies, the hydrangea waterer, stopped me. What you did, Dr. Carr, she said, calling me by my title. It was brave. It made us all look at ourselves. Thank you. I was no longer a victim. I was a resident. Claudia, however, was not finished. Her legal case was dead. But she tried one last social retaliation. She rallied her few remaining allies to file a formal complaint against Noah, alleging he had operated an illegal surveillance drone in a restricted community. The complaint was made public on the new HOA forum. Before Noah or I could even respond, Theo Park, the photographer, posted a reply. To the board, I am the owner and operator of the drone in question. Please find attached my FAA hobbyist license, my flight log for that evening, and a map of the airspace. As you can see, I was operating in unrestricted public airspace, well outside the 200-foot boundary of Seabrook Landing property. The camera was filming for portfolio purposes and inadvertently captured a public event. There was no violation. Any further claims of illegal surveillance will be met with a harassment suit from my lawyer. Claudia's final attack evaporated in a puff of legal fact. Her power was gone. The last person I heard from was my father. He invited me to lunch, not at a fancy restaurant, a small, quiet diner by the water, far from Seabrook. I went. I was guarded. I expected a performance of apologies, of excuses, of begging me to forgive him so he could feel better. It never came. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear. He didn't talk about the meeting. He didn't talk about Claudia. He didn't talk about the blinds. He just asked me a question. Your director mentioned, he said, his voice hesitant, that you're working on a new coral project. Something about thermal resilience? I stared at him. Tell me about it, he said. Tell me about the work. It was a fragile, tiny seedling of hope. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a solution. But it was, for the first time in 20 years, an attempt at a real conversation. He was trying to see me, not just look at me. I decided, sitting there, what my path forward would be. My mother's letter said to be relentless. Avery's strategy was to win. But my victory didn't need to be a scorched earth campaign. I would not push Claudia, or even my father, off a cliff just to prove they could fall. It wasn't my job to be their executioner. But the boundary had to hold. The fence I had built, line by line, with data, with law, and with truth, was non-negotiable. It would stand, firm and permanent, like a seawall, and everyone, my father, my sister, the community, would have to decide which side of it they wanted to live on. My work at Blue Current Institute, the promotion, became the anchor for my new identity. I wasn't just Dr. Carr, the coral expert. I was Eliza Carr, the systems analyst, the woman who understood how to use transparency to fix a broken ecosystem. The local news segment that aired was respectful. Just as I'd insisted, it focused on the process, on the bylaws, and on the community's right to safety. It didn't name Claudia. It didn't have to. It framed me not as a victim, but as a resident who had navigated a complex failure of governance. The interview, combined with the Harborview Post article, had an effect I never anticipated. It turned my trauma into a case study. Dr. Aris, my director, was adamant that my new outreach program should launch immediately. The public is listening right now. Eliza, he said, let's give them something useful to listen to. We didn't book a community hall. I chose the location myself, the Harborview seawall, at the edge of the Blue Current campus, at low tide. The first community dialogue was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon. I expected maybe 20 people, mostly colleagues and a few curious neighbors from Seabrook. Over 75 people showed up. They came from my neighborhood, but also from 3 other HOAs in the county. They were strangers, holding notebooks, their faces anxious and focused. They were people trapped in their own versions of Seabrook Landing. I stood on the stone steps of the seawall, the wind pulling at my hair, the smell of salt and exposed tidal flats filling the air. Noah was at my side, handling a small, battery-powered speaker. I looked at the crowd, at the mix of faces, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a defendant. I felt like a scientist. "Welcome," I began, my voice clear over the speaker, competing only with the sound of the gulls. "Thank you for coming. I study marine ecosystems. I study the places where the ocean meets the land, and the sea teaches us everything we need to know about boundaries." I pointed to the line of wet sand and rocks. "That is a boundary. The shore and the waves coexist. They clash, yes, but they coexist because the boundary is respected. The tide comes in, the shore holds, the tide goes out. It's a process. It's not a war. When that boundary is violated, when a storm surge hits, the ecosystem is damaged. It requires transparency, clear water, and resilience to recover. Human communities," I continued, "are no different. We are an ecosystem. We require clear boundaries to coexist. For a long time, many of us were taught that family or community harmony means erasing our boundaries, that keeping the peace means accepting a violation. That is a lie. That is not harmony. That is just a storm surge waiting to happen." I didn't tell my story. I didn't mention a slap, or a porch, or a closed blind. I saw Judge Whitcomb in the crowd, nodding slowly. I saw Mrs. Davies. We are taught that our only options are to flood the system with anger or to be silent, but there is a third option, the one my work is based on: process, data, and relentless, radical transparency. I held up a simple printed document. Noah handed out copies. "This is what I'm calling the Adult Safety and Extended Families Toolkit. It's not emotional, it's a process." I walked them through it. 1. How to log evidence, a timeline. Time, date, location, verifiable facts, not feelings. 2. How to identify your governing documents, your HOA bylaws, your rental agreements, your community charters. Find the words that protect you. Article 12, Section 4. 3. How to build a data set. Save screenshots. Request time-stamped entry logs. Cross-reference with public data, like sunset times or weather reports. 4. How to build a coalition. Identify allies, a retired judge, a tech-savvy neighbor, a boss who will write a letter. 5. A list of resources, not just hotlines for violence, but contacts for legal aid, for reporting municipal corruption, for free civil consults. You do not fight a system by screaming at it, I concluded. You fight a system by knowing it better than it knows itself. You demand it follow its own rules. You don't demand a public hanging. You demand a public meeting. You don't demand revenge. You demand a live stream. The questions afterward were heartbreaking and precise. What if the bully is the board president? What if they threaten to sue you for slander? What if your own family tells you you're the problem? To each, I gave the same answer. Follow the process, document the threat, find the bylaw. The truth, when presented as data, is not slander, it is just the truth. While this was happening, Blue Current released its own video. It was part of our new outreach. It was beautiful. It opened with a shot of Noah, smiling, launching an underwater ROV from the side of our research vessel. My voice came in over the footage of the coral reefs. My name is Dr. Eliza Carr. My job is to bring light to the deep places, to see what lives in the shadows, and to understand how it survives. The video cut between me in the lab, analyzing data, and Noah in the water, demonstrating the technology. It was a 5-minute piece on our new thermal resilience project. It was purely educational, but to anyone who had followed the story, the subtext was powerful. Noah and I were a team, partners in work and in life, dedicated to bringing things to the light. It was the cleanest possible statement of our values. The local news featured it as their spotlight on science. The response in Seabrook Landing was immediate. The old board was gone. Marjorie was out. Claudia was suspended. The new election was being held, and a group of residents, led by Judge Whitcomb, formally nominated me for the new Independent Transparency Committee. I accepted, but I did so with one non-negotiable condition. I will happily serve, I wrote in my official reply. And my first motion will be that all HOA meetings involving community security, resident complaints, or board governance be live-streamed and the recordings publicly archived. There will be no more closed sessions. There will be no more internal pressure. The residents deserve to see the process. My condition was met with overwhelming public support. The age of closed blinds was over. The second community dialogue, held 2 weeks later, was even larger. The local news station sent a camera. And Brielle showed up? She stood at the back of the crowd, looking thin and nervous, but her eyes were clear. She had cut ties with Claudia completely and was living in a small apartment, working a temp job. At the end of my talk, during the Q&A, she raised her hand. I nodded, my heart in my throat. She walked to the small microphone. "Hi, Eliza," she said, her voice shaking but finding its strength. "I don't have a question. I have a statement." The crowd turned. The news camera focused on her. "I'm Brielle, and I'm the sister. I'm the one who chose the mask. I was silent because I was afraid. I was afraid of losing a perfect life, a perfect brand. I was afraid of the noise, and my silence almost cost my sister her safety and her reputation. I chose fear, and I was wrong. Today, I'm choosing the truth. I am so proud of my sister, and I am here to stand with her, that's all." She was crying, but she was smiling. It was the first truly honest thing I had ever seen her do. As the crowd applauded, a voice cut through the air. "Brielle, that was beautiful, truly." Gavin Lyle. He was striding across the grass, dressed in an impeccable suit, his smile wide and camera ready. He walked right up to Brielle at the microphone. "I am so moved by your journey. B," he said, loud enough for the mic to catch. He tried to put his arm around her. "This is what I've always wanted for you. Real honesty. We can get through this. A public reconciliation. It's so powerful." Brielle looked at him. She looked at his smiling, performing face. She looked at the news camera, and then she looked at me. She turned back to Gavin. She didn't whisper. She spoke directly into the microphone. "No, Gavin, it's not a journey. It's not content. And it's not a public reconciliation. It's just the truth. And you don't know the difference." She held up her left hand. The enormous multi-carat diamond flashed in the sun. "You wanted to postpone the engagement to stabilize the narrative," she said, her voice suddenly like steel. "You were right. The narrative is stable. I am done with Messi, and I am done with you." She pulled the ring off her finger and pressed it into his stunned, open palm. "I choose me. I choose freedom." She turned and walked, not to me, but through the crowd, which parted for her. Gavin stood there, holding the ring, his mask of PR charm finally, completely shattered as the camera zoomed in on his face. From a distance, standing near his car at the edge of the parking lot, my father watched the entire scene. He didn't approach. He didn't try to claim a piece of Brielle's redemption or my platform. He just watched. And as Brielle walked past him, he began, quietly, to applaud. The ecosystem was healing. Claudia, predictably, saw it as an escalation. A few days later, Avery received another letter from another, more expensive law firm. It was a final, desperate threat, alleging continued public harassment and tortious interference with her social and family relationships. Avery did not respond with a countersuit. She responded with a calendar invitation. She emailed Claudia's lawyer. "My client, Dr. Carr, has no interest in harassment. She has an interest in resolution. As such, we formally propose a 3-party, on-the-record mediation. Dr. Carr, Mrs. Mercer, and Mr. Ray Carr. We will bring our entire file. Please bring yours. Here are 3 dates we are available. Let us know which works, or this will be our final offer before proceeding with our civil suit." It was a masterstroke. The community, which was now following the new transparency forum avidly, saw the exchange. They saw Eliza Carr, the one who had been assaulted, offering a formal, procedural, peaceful resolution, and they saw Claudia Mercer, the aggressor, who had done nothing but threaten and hide. It was clear who was following the process and who was avoiding the truth. My message was beginning to resonate. I started getting emails, first from an HOA in the next county, then a property managers association in another state. They wanted me to come and speak. They wanted the toolkit. They wanted to know how to build a transparent ecosystem. My life was no longer about the porch. It was about the seawall. A few weeks later, Noah and I were at that same seawall. It was dusk. The crowds were gone. It was just us, the tide, and a few close friends from Blue Current, pretending to look for crabs. I was explaining a new sensor idea when Noah took both my hands. "Eliza," he said. I stopped. He looked nervous. My engineer, who calibrates ROVs to withstand thousands of pounds of pressure per square inch, was nervous. "You're the most relentless person I've ever met," he said, his voice quiet. "You're the daughter of the tide. You're my partner. You're the scientist who taught me to see the whole ecosystem." He got down on one knee on the wet stones. He wasn't holding a diamond. He was holding a small, perfectly spiraled, pearlescent whelk shell. "There are no fireworks, Eliza. There's no gala. There's just me, and the ocean, and our friends. I know you know how to fight, but I want to be the person you get to be at peace with. Will you marry me?" I was crying, the way I had in my father's office, a cry of release, of being seen. I said yes. I said it 1,000 times. A week later, I got an email. It was from a senior producer at a major video streaming platform, the kind that makes global documentaries. "Dr. Carr, we have been following the story out of Harborview with great interest. Not the family drama, but your work on community transparency. Your boundaries talks are gaining significant traction. We would like to discuss funding and producing a full multi-part series based on your community dialogue. We believe this is a conversation the entire country needs to have." The Blue Current Institute annual gala was the crown jewel of Harborview's social calendar. It was not Claudia's world. It was a world of science, philanthropy, and old New England money. This year, the focus was my project, the Sentinel Reef Initiative. The goal was to raise $500,000 to build a new, climate-resilient coral nursery. The ballroom at the Harborview Grand was filled with tuxedos, sequined gowns, major donors, academics, and, thanks to Avery's careful management, a reserved table for the local press. And at table 7, near the back but conspicuously visible, sat Claudia Mercer. She had not been invited. She had purchased a $2,000 ticket at the door. She was wearing a stunning silver gown, her hair perfect, a look of serene, misunderstood benevolence fixed on her face. She had a professional PR handler with her, a woman in a sharp black suit who was already whispering to a reporter from the style section. Claudia was not there to support the ocean. She was there to reclaim her narrative. She was the charitable, forgiving matriarch, enduring a public trial by a difficult stepdaughter. I was at the head table, next to Dr. Aris and Noah. I felt the weight of her gaze all through the appetizers. I ignored it, focusing on the donors I was there to inspire. After the main course, Dr. Aris went to the podium. "This year's gala is special," he announced. "We are here to fund a future for our oceans, but we at Blue Current have learned that ecological transparency and community transparency are one and the same. Our lead researcher, Dr. Eliza Carr, has become a leader in both." He then introduced Marjorie Flynn. My stomach tightened. I hadn't expected this. Marjorie walked to the stage, looking steadier than she had at the HOA meeting, but still pale. "Good evening," Marjorie said, her voice quiet but firm. "I am the outgoing president of the Seabrook Landing HOA. I am here tonight in a moment of transition. My last official act was to ratify the new Transparency Committee, and my first act as a private citizen is to support the work that inspired it. Dr. Carr is now chair of that committee." She looked at me. "Dr. Carr will now present a special segment on what community transparency truly means." She was, in her own way, handing me the baton. I walked to the podium, my heart pounding. The room was warm, filled with the clinking of glasses. "Thank you, Marjorie," Thank you. Dr. Eris, I began. At Blue Current, we believe in data. We believe that you cannot solve a problem until you are willing to look at it clearly. The same is true for our communities. The main lights dimmed, and the large projector screen behind me lit up. Tonight, I want to share a few stories, not my own, but the stories of other residents who have given their permission to be heard, as long as they remain anonymous. It was a video Noah and Theo had helped me produce, a montage of voices, disguised, laid over abstract, respectful footage of the neighborhood's empty streets. Voice 1. My neighbor's dogs were aggressive. The board said it was just a neighborhood dispute, until one bit a child. They hid the report. Voice 2. Our treasurer was moving funds. I was told I was paranoid for asking to see the books. They bullied me into silence. Voice 3. I reported verbal harassment in the community pool. I was told I was being too sensitive. It turns out 3 other women had reported the same man. The video was 3 minutes long. It was a tapestry of small, secret injustices. As it ended, the screen faded to black, and the lights came up. The room was hushed. These are the costs of silence, I said, gripping the podium. These are the ecosystems that fail when transparency is treated as a threat, and not as a... This is ridiculous. The voice shrieked from the back of the room. Claudia Mercer was on her feet, marching toward the stage. She grabbed the auxiliary microphone from the Q&A stand. Her PR handler looked horrified. You're all sitting here listening to this? Claudia's voice was high, manic, the serene mask cracking. This performance? This is about me. She is using this entire gala to attack her family. Doctor? Eris started to stand up. Avery put a hand on his arm. I am a mother, Claudia yelled into the mic, her voice echoing. I was disciplining a hysterical, out-of-control relative. It was a family matter. It was in-house discipline. The room was frozen. The press table was scribbling frantically. Discipline, a calm voice boomed, does not ever include the battery of an adult in a public place. Mrs. Mercer. Judge Whitcomb was on his feet, his dinner napkin still in his hand. He was not shouting. He was simply projecting, as he had from a bench for 30 years. You were not disciplining a child, he said, walking slowly into the aisle. You were assaulting a 27-year-old woman. Your family matter became a community matter when you committed a crime, and it became a legal matter when you used your power to coerce a board into silence. You are not the victim here. Sit down. Claudia stared at him, her chest heaving. She was trapped, illuminated by the stage lights, her face a mask of pure rage. She's right. The voice was quiet, terrified, and amplified. Brielle. She was standing at the side of the stage, where she had been waiting. She must have planned this. She walked to me at the podium, taking my free hand. She was shaking like a leaf. He's right, she said, speaking into my microphone. She looked at the crowd, her eyes wide. My name is Brielle. I'm her sister. And I was part of the cover-up. I chose the brand. I chose the silence because I was afraid of exactly this. I chose to let my sister be called hysterical and a liar to protect my own comfort. She looked at Claudia. I am done being silent. I am done being afraid. I am standing here tonight to say that what you heard, what you saw, it was the truth, and I am choosing to stand next to my sister. She squeezed my hand. The room was absolutely, profoundly silent. Brie, Claudia whispered, her rage gone, replaced by a look of sheer panic. There's one more thing. My father. He was walking up the aisle, past Judge Whitcomb. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the empty chair at the head table, the one next to me, where I had placed my mother's box. He walked onto the stage. He didn't go to the microphone. He stood between me and Brielle. He looked at the box. He didn't speak. He just knelt, his tuxedo creasing, and opened the clasp. He reached inside and took out the stack of letters tied with a ribbon. He took the one on top, the one she had written to me. He stood up, his hands shaking. He didn't try to speak. He just held the letter out to me, in front of the entire ballroom, in front of the donors, the press, and the woman who had tried to erase her. It was a public surrender, a public confession, a public transfer of allegiance. I took the letter from his hand. My own hands were trembling. My mother was a scientist, I whispered into the mic, my voice thick. She died when I was 12. Her name was Elena Carr, and this is her word, not mine. I unfolded the letter. The room was so still. The silence was a physical pressure. I read, "If you are reading this, you are an adult. The world will try to make you small. It will reward polish over substance." I glanced at Claudia. "It will value gala invitations over title charts. Do not ever let anyone, not even your father," I looked at him, standing right next to me, "teach you to be ashamed of being kind or of being right." I stopped, my throat closing. Brielle put her arm around my waist. My father stood, motionless, tears streaming down his face. No one was attacking, no one was accusing. As I told Brielle, it was just the human truth. And then the lights went out. The entire ballroom was plunged into blackness, a collective gasp. A single, blindingly bright image flashed onto a secondary, portable screen at the side of the stage, the screen Noah had insisted on bringing as a redundant system. It wasn't a slide, it was the doorbell cam. But the audio, it was different. It was sharp, clear, as if you were standing on the porch. "Low class, Eliza, and you always will be." My own voice, "I'm leaving." Claudia's voice, "You don't turn your back on me." And then the slap. The sound was not a thwack. It was a crack, a sharp, brutal, sickening sound that filled the ballroom. It sounded like a gunshot. The light snapped back on. Claudia was clutching her throat, her face white with terror. "Who did that?" she screamed. "Who has that? That's illegal." At the tech table, a woman stood up. It wasn't Theo. It wasn't Noah. It was Marjorie Flynn. She walked to the Q&A microphone, her hands steady for the first time. "I did," Marjorie said, her voice clear. "That was my plan B, or C, or whatever letter we are on." She looked at the crowd. "When I was president, I was a coward. I was afraid of Mrs. Mercer. I was afraid of her power, her lawyers, her influence. I hid. I tried to bury the truth." She turned to Claudia. "When you threatened me, I was scared. But when you threatened her," she pointed to me, "with a lawsuit for telling the truth, I got angry. So I took the original file from the doorbell camera, the one the owner gave me permission to use for any and all community safety matters, and I gave it to the sound engineer at the news station, the one who interviewed Dr. Carr. I asked him, as a favor, to clean it up, to isolate and amplify the audio." She looked at me. "I'm sorry. Eliza, I failed to be transparent then, so I am choosing to be absolutely transparent now. That is the truth. That is the sound of what happened." "That is inadmissible," Claudia's lawyer, the PR woman, shrieked. "That is illegally obtained. It's altered." "It is not," the sound engineer himself said, standing up from the press table. "It's the original file, isolated. It is perfectly legal to share with the consent of the camera's owner, which Mrs. Flynn obtained in writing, for a public community meeting, which this effectively is." A long silence. Then, a new voice, a man in an expensive tuxedo, at the main donor table. He stood up. He was one of the biggest philanthropists in the state. "I run a foundation," he said, his voice quiet but carrying. "We fund education, we fund science, we fund art, but tonight, I have just seen the most valuable thing I have ever witnessed at one of these events. Honesty, raw, difficult, and necessary honesty." He looked at me, at Dr. Aris. "Dr. Aris, my foundation was planning on a $50,000 contribution tonight. We are increasing that to $250,000. I am not funding this project despite this honesty. I am funding it because of it. Carry on. Dr. Carr. A wave of applause, stunned and then thunderous, filled the room. The press cameras were flashing, their red recording lights on. I looked at Claudia. Her face was no longer PR perfect. It was empty. She was beaten, not by me, not by Avery, but by the simple, relentless, amplified truth. The cameras turned to me. The donors were watching. My father and Brielle were at my side. I took a deep, steadying breath. I put my mother's letter back in my pocket. I looked past the cameras, past the donors, to the large Blue Current logo on the wall. I did not address Claudia. I did not address my father. I did not address the drama. I stuck to the script. Thank you, I said, my voice strong again. Thank you for that incredible support. Now, if you will please turn your attention to the main screen, I would like to show you the schematics for the new thermal resilient nursery. The problem we are facing, as you can see from this data. I went on with my speech. I talked about the ocean. I talked about the project. I talked about the community we were building, both underwater and on the shore. I didn't look back, but I heard a sound, a single, violent push of a chair. I heard the thump of the ballroom's side door closing. I glanced at the heavy glass doors she had exited through. For a moment, her face was reflected in the dark glass, illuminated by the lights of the parking lot. It was the first time I had ever seen her face without its mask of careful, practiced performance. It was just a face, pale, empty, and gone. The gala was the climax, but it wasn't the conclusion. The battle was won, but the new boundaries had to be surveyed and set in stone. That work was colder, quieter, and happened in a sterile civil courtroom 2 weeks later. Avery had requested this hearing for the permanent protective order. Claudia was there, as required. Her expensive lawyer was at her side, but Claudia herself looked diminished. The PR mask was gone, and her face was just pale and tired. Avery didn't perform for a crowd. She simply, methodically, presented the case to the judge. It was a masterpiece of layered data. Your Honor, we present Exhibit A, the primary doorbell camera footage, with audio verified by a forensics lab, showing the unprovoked assault. Exhibit B, the high-angle drone footage, corroborating the physical actions and the timeline. Exhibit C, the medical report from Harborview Urgent Care, detailing the soft tissue trauma and bruising. Exhibit D, the sworn notarized affidavit from the Honorable James Whitcomb, a direct eyewitness. Judge Whitcomb was called to the stand. He was, if possible, even more precise and formidable in a courtroom. In your professional legal opinion, Judge Whitcomb, what did you observe? Avery asked. I observed a battery. Counselor, he said, his voice ringing with authority. Clear, unprovoked, and initiated by the defendant against the plaintiff, who was in a state of de-escalation and attempting to leave the property. Claudia's lawyer tried to cross-examine. Judge, isn't it true this is just a family spat? That you're friends with Dr. Carr? Judge Whitcomb looked at him over his glasses. I have had precisely 3 conversations with Dr. Carr in my life. 2 of them were about this incident. My only friendship is with the truth. What I saw was a crime. Next question. Finally, Avery called her last witness. The defense has claimed this was a private matter, that the plaintiff was hysterical. We would like to call Mr. Ray Carr to the stand. My father walked to the stand. He did not look at Claudia. He did not look at me. He was sworn in. Avery was gentle. Mr. Carr, you were present in the house during the assault. You were seen through the living room window. Can you tell the court what you did? He gripped the railing. This was his moment. He could have lied. He could have equivocated. He could have said he didn't see it clearly. I saw it, he said, his voice quiet but clear. I saw Claudia Mercer strike my daughter. I saw it all. And what did you do, Mr. Carr? I closed the blinds, he said. Why did you do that? Were you afraid of your daughter? Did she seem, as your wife has claimed, hysterical? He finally looked up, and his gaze met mine. "No," he said. Eliza was calm. She was standing up for herself. I closed the blinds. Because I was a coward. I was afraid of the noise. I was afraid of what the neighbors would think. I was afraid of a scandal. I failed my daughter because I was afraid of my wife and my community. I am not making an excuse. It is just the fact. Claudia sank in her chair, closing her eyes. Her own husband had just become the state's best witness. The judge's ruling was swift. This court finds unequivocally for the plaintiff. The evidence is overwhelming. This was not discipline. This was assault. He issued a permanent 3-year protective order. Claudia Mercer was to remain at least 100 yards from me, my home, and my place of work, the Blue Current Institute, at all times. But he went further. This court mandates that Mrs. Mercer provide a formal written apology to Dr. Carr. Furthermore, she is ordered to complete a 12-month court-approved anger management and behavioral therapy program. Failure to comply will result in a review and potential criminal charges. It was over. He had not just granted me safety, he had mandated her accountability. The boundary was now drawn in steel, and it was enforced by the law. The waves from that decision spread through Seabrook Landing. The HOA election was held. A new president, a finance professor with no ties to the old guard, was elected. The Transparency Committee was officially ratified and funded. Its first act was to standardize the process for extracting security footage and to make all board meetings, without exception, available via a mandatory public livestream. Claudia lost everything. Her name was quietly removed from the gala committees and charity boards she had once ruled. She was a pariah in the community she had curated. The legal fees and the social isolation were their own kind of justice. I heard, through the grapevine, that she had registered for the anger management program. The court gave her a path back, a chance to rebuild. But whether she would ever choose to walk it, that was her decision, not mine. The ecosystem began to heal. Brielle, having cut ties with Gavin for good, was adrift. She came to me, hesitant, asking for advice. "I don't know who I am," she confessed. "My entire life was a brand, and it's gone. So build something real," I told her. A week later, she applied for a junior-level communications assistant job at Blue Current. My director hired her, not as a favor to me, but because she was good. The contract was transparent. The pay was less than half of what she made in marketing, but I saw her in the halls, writing press releases about new kelp forest initiatives, and for the first time, she looked happy. She was building something real. My father and I began to talk. It was slow, tentative. He asked me to dinner. Just the two of us. He was quiet, humbled. "I want to rebuild," he said, his voice thick. "If you'll let me, I want to be the father I should have been." "I'm willing to try," I said, looking him in the eye. "But you have to understand, the truth can't just be for a courtroom. It has to be for us. It has to be real, even when no one is watching." He nodded, understanding. It was a start. My own new beginning was more certain. Noah and I didn't want a gala. We didn't want a ballroom or a brand. We got married on a clear, cold Tuesday in November, on the tidal rocks at the base of the seawall. The tide was out. My mother's world. It was small, just us. Dr. Eris, Brielle, Theo, and Judge Whitcomb, who officiated, a few of the neighbors who had spoken up, like Mrs. Davies. We didn't have a receiving line. We had a circle, and in our vows, we never used the word victory or winning. We talked about partnership. We talked about data. We talked about building a life based on trust and on boundaries that were safe and sacred. The documentary series on the streaming platform aired that winter. It was called The Seawall Principle. They had used my community dialogues as the framework. The producers had wanted to make me the star, to focus on the porch, the slap, the drama. I refused. I made them focus on the process. The final segment showed me on the seawall, speaking to a new group of residents. My voice was calm, not triumphant. "We choose transparency not to humiliate those who hide," I said. but to build a system where hiding is no longer necessary. We bring things to the light to prevent the rot from ever taking hold again. A week after the series aired, one last package arrived at my apartment. An anonymous, plain envelope. Inside, no note, just a single memory card. I plugged it in. It was footage from that night, the night on the porch. But it was a new angle. From a side window of a different neighbor's house, it showed the entire scene. It showed the slap. It showed the blinds closing. But it showed something else. It showed another neighbor, Mr. Henderson from 3 doors down, stepping off his porch. He was starting to walk toward us. He had his hands up, as if to say, "Hey, let's calm down." And the audio, faint but clear, captured Claudia. Seeing him, she pointed a finger and screamed, "Get back in your house. This is private." He had frozen, then, defeated, turned and walked back inside. Someone had tried to intervene. Someone had tried to stop it, and been shouted down. This was the final piece. The proof that the silence wasn't just apathy, it was enforced. I watched it once, then I ejected the card. I could have released it. I could have sent it to the news. It would have been the final, humiliating nail in Claudia's coffin. I put the card in a small envelope and gave it to Avery. "For the record," I said. "For the file, we're not using it." "Eliza," she said, a rare, small smile on her face. "You've already won." "This was never about winning," I told her. "It was about being done. I didn't need any more humiliation to win. I just needed the boundary to be secure." That night, I stood on the real seawall. My seawall. The wind was cold, and the tide was coming in. The sound of the waves was relentless, a steady, patient rhythm. I took my mother's letter from my pocket. I knew the words by heart now. "Do not ever let anyone teach you to be ashamed of being kind, or of being right." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. An email. It was from a community association in Arizona. "Dear Dr. Carr, we saw your series. We are dealing with our own crisis of transparency. We were wondering if you would be willing to share your transparency and boundaries model with our board." I smiled. The work wasn't over. It was just beginning. I looked out at the water. Justice hadn't come like a bolt of lightning. It hadn't come like a hurricane, destroying everything in its path. It had come like the tide, patient, relentless, and inevitable. It just wore the old structures down, bit by bit, until the truth was the only thing left standing. The climax of my story wasn't the moment someone fell. It was the moment we all, as a community, finally agreed to hold the line. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.